Welcome to Haltech Elite NSP Training Part 55. In this training module, we're going to be exploring using our engine protection failsafe strategies within our NSP software. We have multiple different severities within the engine protection, and we can assign those in a variety of different ways. We're going to explore setting up some common failsafe strategies so you can implement these on your engine. Without further wait, let's jump in so we can check this out.
Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with our engine failsafe protection within our Haltech using our NSP software. We always want to have engine failsafe protection in place before we run our vehicle, before we do any tuning, or certainly heading into racing conditions. If we have low oil pressure, we want to cut off the engine. We don't allow it to run with that dangerous low oil pressure condition. If we have a lean condition, let's say our wideband is showing a lean condition in boost, maybe we have a drop of fuel pressure, maybe there's something else going on, and we're running lean, that's dangerous for the engine. We want to shut things down. So we have the ability to use engine failsafe protection features with the Haltech to look at certain sensor channels that are really important, things like coolant temperature, oil pressure, fuel pressure, wideband air fuel, EGTs, coolant pressure, manifold pressure. All of these are basic sensor inputs that we might have wired into our Haltech. We can allow the Haltech to keep a watch eye over those specific channels, programming specific thresholds to trigger a failsafe protection. So for example, if I get too lean, under boost, under a certain amount of throttle, we can shut down the engine or rev limit the engine. If our oil pressure gets too low, we can shut down the engine. So we have three total levels that we have within the engine protection features. So we have different severities that we can implement this failsafe protection. Now, if we have sensor faults for any of these sensors, we can also implement a failsafe protection. So we're going to go and learn how we can work with the three different levels and applying those to a couple different scenarios. So I'm going to go just run through how I set up failsafe protection features for, again, some of these more common, generally used channels. And you can use those as a good starting point. You might need to tweak and adjust it for your engine. So something like oil pressure, it's going to be different for every engine, depending on what kind of oil viscosity and your bearing clearances. Oil pressure will definitely be relative to the engine that you're dealing with. And there's going to be acceptable thresholds that you might want to trigger that failsafe protection. So we'll talk about that as we go into that specific example of oil pressure. But what we'll be working with here and what I'll be showing you will be excellent starting points to start to populate your failsafe protection. I always set up my failsafe protection before I do any actual tuning, before I even fire up the engine. So I like to go and generate the input-output list of what I'm working with for my engine, for my Haltech, knowing what sensors are available, and then going in and configuring any of the failsafe protection based on those sensors. So I try to give my maximum amount of engine protection whenever possible. It doesn't make sense to spend all the money on your vehicle, spend all the money on building your engine and having all the best parts, and then skimp on setting up engine failsafe protection. It just does not make sense. You can easily avoid engine damage, having engine failsafe set up here and configure it properly, having that watch eye over your engine. You're not always going to have the laptop open. You're going to be in racing conditions. So it's always good to know the Haltech's there to do its job, to be able to save the engine or put you out of a bad condition that it can have a watchful eye over. Now, there's certainly situations where if you have a sensor failing, it can create problems and have a false reading. Let's say your wideband air fuel, wideband sensor's going bad. That can create some problems. It can create a false lean reading and start to trigger or trip the lean protection, but I'd rather have that happen and go figure out and diagnose the problem than being in a situation where the engine's actually lean and, again, leaning out and melting pistons, having knock, damaging the engine, having to rebuild the engine, costing thousands of dollars and tons of wasted time, all which could have been avoided if we had the failsafe protection enabled. All right, let's take a look at where we can find the engine failsafe protection, talk about our different levels, configure some of those, and then go in and set up these failsafe protections for some of these more common channels, sensors that we're dealing with the Haltech. Now I'm going to assume at this point that you've already watched earlier training modules of how to configure and set up various different sensor inputs. So temperature sensors, pressure sensors. I'm going to just go through setting up just the failsafe conditions here for the sensors. I'm going to assume that you've already dealt with wiring the sensor, calibrating the sensor, verifying and validating the sensor reads right, looking at those channels. So I'm not going to get into any of that because we've covered that earlier in the training course. So let's jump in here from our Lambda tuning window and let's go over here into our main window. Then we're going to go up here to our navigation tree and we're going to move down here on the side. I'm specifically going to go under engine functions and we're going to move down here under engine protection. Under engine protection, this is going to be where we find 3 levels of engine protection that we have. We have level 1, level 2, and level 3. There's different severities, so least severe to...
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.